sigh. Look, the lights are on. The shadows are growing. It's dark and cold and wet outside. It's October. Again. You know what that means? That means it's been 3 years that we've been doing Decades of Dwarf. But don't worry, I've got plenty more. So we're going to take a look at an exciting issue. 82. October 1986. And you can tell from the cover why I'm excited about this one. Ooh, yeah, you know what that's the cover from, right? And we're going to do this one. October 1991. So, let's crack on and do it, shall we? Here we go then. White Dwarf issue 82. October 1986, and the launch of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Is it the best roleplay system ever devised? Well, I like it. But then I like it for the world as much as for anything else. Paul Cockburn at the helm. Yep. We've got some reviews, including Orcbusters here. It's an RPG adventure, but it's for paranoia. So some fantasy orcs escape into the paranoia world, and people have got to deal with it. So, is it a thinly veiled Lord of the Rings spoof with the usual paranoia humour? Why, yes, of course it is. Excellent stuff all around. We've got Open Box reviewing the second part of Lankmar, Swords of Deceit, with this cover. That, I think, is one of the finest covers. I love those skeletons. So when I was painting my Chaz Elliott skeletons for my Lichmaster army, that was very much what I had in mind. And I think somebody's done, is it... I can't remember who it is. Someone's done a set of these guys based on that picture, and they're very, very lovely. You can win one of 50 copies of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay if you correctly match these role-playing systems to their manufacturers and send it off. And send it off before the closing date, which means that none of us can do it now. What a shame. Dave Langford's famously critical book reviews continue apace. And we have a very fine article here by Gary Chalk. And you can tell, can't you? Look at the sales on these guys. They're definitely Gary Chalk images. The whole thing has a very Gary Chalk illustration feel to it. This is nautical rules, not necessarily dwarf, although there's some dwarves in here. It's quite fun going through and picking out all the models. There's some identifiable Citadel miniatures, and some that are not Citadel, I think, as well, on these boats. So this is not Warhammer specific. This is not fantasy wargame specific. These are general rules for ships. Moving them, damaging them, movement of the wind and the direction of the current and all the rest of it, along with a nice little logo, or not logo, nice little drawing here. And I thought there was some. Oh yeah, they're here. So a very small scale. You'd have to blow it up. Set of templates. So apparently, the next Citadel Compendium will include a card boat kit by Dave Andrews. Well, I don't think it did. Was there even a next Citadel Compendium? I can't remember which one was out at this point, but I think it stopped very soon after, and certainly that kit never materialised. Maybe it's still somewhere in a cupboard, maybe at the Ansel's place, in a box of unused card bits and pieces. Some more pages of adverts. And we have an extract from Terry Pratchett's new book, The Light Fantastic. First couple of pages of the book, along with some very Warhammer versions of the imagery. But it's pretty cool seeing a non-Discworld take on, or non-official Discworld take on some of the Discworld characters. And you can win a copy of The Colour of Magic and The Light Fantastic. And whilst Gobbledygook meets up with Thrud and deals with Thrud, who's also going to appear later on, of course, in his own strip, we shall carry on looking at the Discworld with a stroll across the Discworld. Now, of course, AD&D Adventures on the Back of a Giant Turtle at this point, the only Discworld books that are out are Colour of Magic, Light Fantastic, which I think most people will agree. Terry Pratchett is one of my favourite authors, but I think most people will agree with me that these two books are really quite different from what came before. These were very much a D&D parody, and based on his own D&D games, and then what came after was the more fully realised world with cultures, etc, etc. So there are bits of that, of course, in the first two books, but it hasn't really got going, I don't think. And so this walk across Discworld, appropriate though it is to the first two books, is not really so very highly fitting to what came afterwards. Of course, there was a GURPS, Discworld role-playing game, or source book at least, which had some flaws, largely this, which this also has a little bit. The magic system in the magic in Discworld is quite different, I think, to the way that magic works in a lot of other fantasy settings, especially AD&D, and also GURPS. So pointing people at the GURPS magic sourcebook in order to do magic in Discworld doesn't really seem like it fits particularly well. Yeah, but this at least makes a passable effort at, I mean, wizards and spells are basically what you've got to go on at this point, right, in Discworld. The rest hasn't really been explored very thoroughly. So you've got tourists, you've got death, you've got dragons, you've got trolls, you've got Bel-Shamharoth, all the characters and monsters that appear in the first two books, but not really very much else. And I guess this is quite fitting time-wise now, because Modiphius are bringing out their Discworld D20 role-playing game, and we will see what that's like. I suspect it will be like every other Modiphius D20 role-playing game with a skin over the top of it, which won't necessarily be very interesting to me, but it is a Discworld one, so maybe it'll be interesting. Comedy role-playing games. Do they work? Discuss. And is Discworld a comedy anyway? Should you be setting it? Yeah, I guess it's hilarious in places, but it's the setting itself, I think, is that because it's quite serious in places. Anyway, enough of that. Discuss in the comments section. Here is a traveller adventure, Mercy Mission. Bunch of characters sent to a world where a mysterious disease has broken out that's been known of only in one other place in the universe, or at least the galaxy, and the adventurers are being tasked with containing it. Excellent. Everyone loves to be sent to a world to contain a virulent disease. That's everyone's great idea of a good time. It's interrupted by this little pull-out section, which hasn't been pulled out, on One Fantasy Roleplay, with an overview of how the game works, along with a bit of a history of the Warhammer world and some discussion, some little flavour text. Some example illustrations, of course, those wonderful Tony Ackland character illustrations from the first rulebook. And a discussion of the Enemy Within and the Shadows over Bogenhafen campaigns that were to come, and Blood for the Blood God, a battle pack for use with Realm of Chaos, which I'm not convinced ever saw the light of day. Is that another thing that's been lurking somewhere, yet to be discovered? And this marvellous John Civic illustration, which is, of course, on the cover. John Civic being the chap who also illustrated the front cover of The Woods. Very nicely of him. And I approached him to do so because of this illustration and the one on the Warhammer Fantasy Battle World book. There you go. Right, here's the map for that Mercy Mission module. Should I give too much away? There is a mysterious link between the only other known case of this disease and this case of this disease. And I feel like, unusually for a White Dwarf scenario, this is one that the players actually could possibly discover and make the link if they do enough exploration. I feel like this is not one that the GM is never ever going to get across to his players. There may be a way of discovering it, but it is not necessarily the focus of the mission. The focus of the mission is around the tribe, who seem to be suffering from the contagion. So the players may not get anywhere near the truth. Here is Thrud the Barbarian meeting the mutant radioactive zombie bikers from Hell to decide who's the meanest band on the streets of the Hobbit's Armpit. That would be Thrud, right? And here's this amazing Essex model, the Dragon under Dwarf attack, which you can still get. This is still available from Essex. This illustration makes it look phenomenal, but Essex, being the website that it is, it doesn't have a picture. So you have to do a little bit of research to find it, but it is well worth doing that research. Find this model. It's very, very cool. I like it a lot. It's got a very Bob Ollie look to it, and I suspect that that's where that's what it might be. Here's John Blanche, of course, displaying some of his works, including this majestic undead diorama that is still on display in Warhammer World. Go and see it. It's very cool. It's even better in person than it is in all of the photographs of it, but this is at least a nice big photograph of it. And here's that classic Asgard Troll Chieftain, Slambo, various other bits. And this is the release month of the limited edition Warlock and Kinky Chaos Amazon from the previous White Dwarf cover that we saw a couple of months ago. And here's John Blanche's Minotaur. Now, I, heretically, not a big fan. Yeah, £1.50 for the two of them. They're certainly not that anymore. Not a big fan of John Blanche's miniature painting. Some of his paintings I love, especially the Chaos Amazon painting. His miniature painting just leaves me a little bit cold. I know that's heretical. Loads of people love it, idolise it. I'm not such a fan, but there you go. That's just me. Here are the latest from Citadels, some Judge Dredd, some Lord of the Rings, some Doctor Who, some Chaos Thugs, some Ogres, and the Feudal selection. And some of these I picked up recently from Foundry. Most of these are still available through Foundry. They're all quite little knights, but I had to pick up some of these packs. Well, I didn't have to. I did pick up some of these packs to get models for my Warriors combat cards, and so some of these were also in those packs. So I have those. I'm going to do a little Bretonnian force with them. I've got some ideas for that. But that's another project down the line. Here are some of them painted, along with the Warhammer stats for them. Here's a very interesting review of Dungeons and Dragons Up the Garden Path. Well, it's not really a review, but it mentions it. This is possibly the rarest D&D module ever created. This one was created from for, I believe, the Chelsea Flower Show or something similar than that. It's very weird. But apparently you'll be able to pick up a copy at Games Day 86 if you're going to Games Day 86. And obviously they had some copies left over. But as it's extremely rare, extremely hard to find, and very bizarre, very weird adventure, that one. Here's a discussion, Cartophilia, discussion of maps. I guess that'd be the love of maps, which of course every good fantasy gamer has to have a love of maps. This is a discussion of why you would make a map, what kind of map you would make for different purposes. Maybe teaching people to suck eggs, but worth a discussion probably. Here's a Judge Dredd article on Narcs, except that it isn't. Don't know why it's called Narcs when right at the very beginning of this paragraph at the top here, it talks about how judges have narcs on their payroll, but the smart judges have informers as well. These are civilian informants. And this article is really about why civilians would become civilian informants. It's not about narcs being perps ratting on each other. It's not about narcs at all. It is about informants, civilian informants, how to encourage them, how to use them in games, what kind of hints and tips that they might drop, what kind of things they know, why they might choose to be informants, that kind of thing. And then we get to the skeleton horde, the best plastics in existence, which leads me very nicely onto White Dwarf 142. For 5 years later, with Robin Dews at the helm, we find an undead army, featuring no less those very plastic skeletons, and a Mike McVie painting guide on painting those very skeletons, which then appeared in the 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle boxed set, even though there were no skeletons in that box set. Why they didn't do one with goblins and high elves, even though there was a goblin and a high elf one that they produced as a separate insert to go into the box. Why they chose to put this one into the rulebook and not that one into the rulebook, I don't know. Anyway, this is Richard Gunson's Undead Army. I know nothing else apart from this article that Richard Gunson's done. He's a keen miniature painter and Warhammer Fantasy Battle player who's recently joined the team here at Games Workshop, but I don't recall seeing his name on anything significant. But maybe I shall look out for it and we might see it since. Here is the Tom Mayer Zombie Dragon, the precursor to the Flying Cabbage, and a lovely little Gribbly model there, still available from Ralpatha, where I think it's the princely sum of £10, might be £12 now, something like that. Lovely chunk of lead, and of course I have one in my army. Here's that Skeleton Horde box cover by John Blanche. Some Gribbly old Skeleton Cavalry, the Skullchucker, and of course, let's do it this way around. There we go. There's his skeleton army in its in all of its bony glory. Lovely stuff. Skeleton chariot that goes with the Skullchucker, and Mike McVeigh's how to paint skeletons article, which is basically chestnut wash, right? Chestnut wash, and then some careful, precise highlighting if you feel like it. Space Hulk questions and answers. People have been asking for some explanations as to the specifics of the Gene Stealer supplement, so that's what we have here. Some slight modifications after further playtesting to things like the lightning arc, what it can reach, what it can't reach. So if you're playing the rules from Gene Stealer, you might want to check this out because it modifies a few of them. But also just some clarifications for specific situations that may occur. Here's another McVeigh painting guide. He was busy this month, and this time he's painting epic Space Marines. So I guess not a lot of painting to do on an epic Space Marine. Certainly judging by this picture, it looks like a lot of paint it red, wash it. But he was obviously being kept very busy at this point. And there's a mighty Blood Angels army resplendent in red on the lovely green grass outside this ruined city. Chapter colour painting guide, should you wish to do individual shoulder pads and things on your tiny, tiny Space Marines. Tanks and so forth. Tank insignias, Titan insignias, all that kind of thing. Here is a short story by Neil McIntosh, The Black Sail, about a character who's trying to get home for some particular reason, who goes aboard a ship with a mysterious merchant who may or may not have pilfered something from a Chaos Sorcerer, who may or may not, spoiler alert, is chasing after them in a boat with black sails. Very dramatic story with these cool Stephen Teppen illustrations that have that very Ian Miller look to it, especially with the fish with the nautical theme. Feels very Ian Miller. Here are the super cool Marauder Giant Ogres that either sprang out of the Ogre prototypes from the Hero Quest Against the Ogre Horde box, or possibly were in development and the Against the Ogre Horde ogres were just a continuation of it. They're not quite the same as this. There's different torsos. The arms are slightly different. The heads are slightly different, although there's very much the same kind of design going on here. Those two prototypes I think I showed in a previous video sometime last year. They had the short version of the legs. These are the long version of the legs here. I don't know when the short version came out, but they don't appear on this catalogue page. All of the other parts are here, but are slightly different to the, although you've got the crew cut, the mohawk, and the flappy Mongolian kind of hat, which are very much the heads that are in the ogre horde, and the axe and the club and the spiky fist, which are very much the weapons that are in the ogre horde, but they are different. So if you have any of these, scrutinize them hard. If they're the prototype ones, let me know, because I would love to acquire a set of the prototype ogres to go with my other Hero Quest prototypes. And this guy, of course, the torso with the spiky thing and the hat, very prevalent from that Mike McVeigh ogre, dragon ogre conversion with the big eagle. These are such cool models, and they are big, and they are chunky, and they are great, and they are super difficult to get hold of. So if you have any, lucky you. Weapons for Space Marine Imperial Titans, including this lovely Inferno gun template. Stunning, isn't it? And then the same for Gargants. Great Gargants. Some data cards and more weapons, but this time for confrontation. Yes, we are back in the world of Necromunda, back in confrontation with some very familiar weapons. Auto pistols, auto guns, auto cannon, bolt pistol, bolt gun, heavy bolter, conversion beamer, D cannon, hand flamer, graviton gun, grenade launcher, hand bow, las pistol, las gun, las cannon, multi laser, melter gun, multi melter, missile launcher, needle pistol, needle gun, plasma pistol, plasma gun, heavy plasma gun, shotgun, stub gun, heavy stub, shuriken pistol, shuriken catapult, shuriken cannon, web gun, heavy webber. Very much the same weapon list that you will find in Rogue Trader, of course, that being the world in which this is set, but quite different stats to represent the very different way that weapons work in confrontation. But this is quite useful, I guess, as a source comparison. You put this alongside the 40k books, because this is a lot smaller scale skirmish stuff. You get more detail as to what these weapons are actually supposed to do in this article. The 40k ones, being on a much larger scale, a much more abstracted scale, are a lot sort of vaguer on the effects and the range and the kind of magazines and things that these weapons have. You get a lot more of a sense of what was in the mind of the weapons creator at this point. And of course these lovely drawings that are also in Rogue Trader, because you would have an orc heavy plasma gun, maybe you would in Necromunda. These are not Necromunda specific weapons or designs of weapons. And then we have the catalogue pages, these wonderful metal skeletons that of course you could paint in the same way as Mike McVeigh suggests that you paint them, especially if you spray them with a bone colour first. A lot of these guys I've not actually seen in the flesh, or flesh, in the bone, in the lead. I've seen some of these guys, but a lot of these guys not come across before, which is interesting. It's a fun range to peruse. Here's that myriad of Titan heads and weapons that you can get to upgrade your plastic Reaver Titans, and the Orc Great Guardian, and the wonderful Skeleton Army box, the successor of the Skeleton Horde, now with cavalry and chariots, and the best plastics box ever produced. I will stand by that comment. And then here we are, Ultramarines from Games Workshop Leeds store, with some cool muted subdued land raiders and some grey knights, and this sort of occasional bone colour. I guess that's a kind of apothecary colour standing out there, but resplendent against the classic green grass background. That must be a studio table, I guess, that they brought in. Excellent. So there we are. That's White Dwarf 142 and White Dwarf 82. And I hope you enjoyed those. And I hope you'll join me next week for 2 more. Take care.